Okay. I'm going to do Daf Yud Aleph today. That's today's daf for the recording. I this morning was able to sit with John. We ended up learning the daf together, but we only really got through the first Omad. So for the sake of the recording, to have both sides of the Omad together, I'm just going to go through the daf a little bit more of a quick way, just to have it. Today's daf Yud Aleph. We left off daf Yud Amud Beis. We were by 10 lines from the bottom. The words of Amar Rava. The Gemara has been discussing throughout the entire parak all of the halachas of Chol Moed, when malach is aser, when malach is mutter. We know that malach is going to be aser on Chol Moed, either midrabanan or deraisa. Regardless, it was handed to the Chachamim the ability to choose which malachas are mutter, which malachas are aser, when they're aser, when they're mutter. And we know that the basic rules are that there are a handful, 5 exceptions for when malacha is mutter. We discussed some of them already. We touched upon Davra Avid, that's what we're about to discuss in detail. But there are others, Tzarech Hamoret, Tzarech Yantiv, Ochel Nefesh, there's a couple of other ones. And the point basically is that if you understand that the Isser on Chol Hamoed to do malacha isn't simply an Isser malacha of Shabbos and Yontif that extends into Chol Hamoed, but rather it's an understanding that in order to be mechabed the Yontif properly, in order to have a Simchas Yontif on Chol Hamoed, a person has to have a clear mind to be able to do it. A person has to have a clear schedule to be able to do it. And so therefore, the Isser Malacha fundamentally comes down to understanding those things that are going to prevent a person from having Simchas Yontif, or prevent a person from having the ability to be Yotzei mitzvah of Samachta B'Chagecha. And so therefore, the Malacha is going to be Aser if it has, let's say, a unique level of Tircha, if it is going to be Mezalzel in the Yontif, if it's going to take him completely out of the Yontif. But if it turns out that for some reason the malacha that he's going to be doing, if he by not doing it, it's going to cause him an even greater level of agmas nefesh, for instance, he's going to have a tremendous financial loss, then the halacha would be that it's going to be mutter. And so that's where we're starting today. Amar Rava, pragmatia kol shu aser, business of some type, any business, like you're buying merchandise to sell in a store, or you're a wholesaler, whatever it is, you're engaging in business of some type on Chol Hamoed. The halacha is that any type of business is aser, whether it's a concern for Shema Yichtov, we're nervous you're going to come to write something, which is a malacha itself on Chol Hamoed, or the concern is exactly what we were discussing before, that maybe there's a tircha in doing this work. Regardless, the halacha is that it's aser to do it on Chol Hamoed because it's an isser malacha Chol Hamoed. However, Amar Rav Yosi bar Avin over Davar ha'Avid mutter. However, Rava wouldn't argue with this. Rav Yosi bar Avin is explaining that the single exception to the rule of pragmatia, which would be aser, is if it's a Davar ha'Avid. So as we said before, when something has a unique level of tircha, it's going to be aser on Chol Hamoed. And the halacha is that if it's a Davar ha'Avid, if there's going to be a loss, then it's going to be mutter. We'll see an example of this. Ravina havalei hahu iska to have mizdaven b'shisa alfi. He had a certain business that he was able to be either. It had a value of $6,000, let's say. Shehiyaz lizvuni basar chala demayada, but by waiting until after Chol Hamoed, zavni b'treisar alfa, he was able to sell it for twice that value. It seems the Gemara is bringing the Moshe to sort of employ all of us that despite the times when there are going to be a hefsid meruba from doing various malacha, it seems clear that a person with his emunah and bitachon in proper amounts would be able to be zocha to even have more of a bracha by not doing the malacha. Obviously, what Ravina was saying over here is not halacha l'maisa. It's just maisa. It's just a maisa, a musar haskell for us. But regardless, the din of Davar ha'Avid would have allowed him to do the business on Chol Hamoed. Ravina have a masik zuzi b'fnei akra de shanusa. He had a certain, let's say he loaned money to a bunch of chevra who lived on the river, the Shanusa River, and let's say he's been having a hard time collecting the money. Also, Lekamed the Ravashi, he came in front of Ravashi, his compatriot, and Amar Lei, he said, Mahu lemezel ha'idna alayu, can I go today? It's Chol Hamoed. Am I allowed to go and get in my horse, travel all the way? It's a big tircha. Can I go and go collect the money? Meaning I happen to know they're going to be home now. They're home for Chol Hamoed, they're home for Yontif, and I want to go to their house. I'm going to go collect. I know I'll be able to catch them. I've been trying to call them. I've been trying to get them on the phone. I haven't been able to get any successful collections actions done over here. So therefore, I want to be able to go collect. But it's a malacha on Chol Hamoed. So Amar Lei, Rav Ashi said back in Kivan, de'ha'idnahu de mishkachas lahu, and b'yoyim achrina loy mishkachas lahu. Since today you'd be able to find them. Meaning what? it'll come out that if you wait till after Chol Hamoed, you're not going to be able to find them. This is kiprakmatia ha'avidami. This will be the equivalent of business that if you don't do it now, you're going to lose. And the halacha is going to be that it's mutter. The Gemara is going to bring a raya, Tanya Nami, that this concept of a dover ha'avid being mutter, despite the fact that the underlying act should maybe be aser for another reason. But if there's a dover ha'avid, if there's a financial loss, we're going to say it's mutter. We find it in another case, Gabi Avodah Zarah. Now, not actual Avodah Zarah, but the Avodah Zarah of a person has an opportunity to go to a market and to buy stuff that he's going to be able to get at a much cheaper price. But the market is not a market, a Jewish market, it's a Goyish market. And not only is it a Goyish market, but it's a Goyish market that is set up specifically for a celebration of their Avodah Zarah. So let's say like a church, sale or something like that. Now the money can't be going, the proceeds of the sale can't be going to the Avodah Zarah. That Avodah is Aser. But here the concern is that if you're going to patronize the business, they might say, "Oh, Baruch Hashem, Baruch whatever their Avodah Zarah is, thank the good Lord, He's blessed us with this business," and they're going to go say, "Have a karas hatov" to their God, and you're going to be machshil them and the lifnei iver lisita machshil of them doing their Avodah Zarah. So the question is that mutter, is that aser? So we say over here like this: Ki agav, holchin, the halacha is you're allowed to go liyirid shel akum, to a place, to a shuk. Rashi says yuma de shuka, on the day that they set up such a shuk. Like I said, like imagine like a sale that is a Christmas sale of some type, where it's regular business, but they're doing it as a celebration of their own Avodah Zarah. So you're allowed to go there. You're allowed to buy animals, avodim, slaves, or shvachais, batim, homes, sadais, ukramim, whatever it is that's being sold over there. You can go to this yirid, and you're allowed to buy all these things. Not only that, the koisu v'malaber kol shalahen, you can write shtarais, receipts, whatever it is, that it can then ultimately be used in their bezdin, which normally the halach is not allowed to go to. Why is that mutter? All because of Hadav Rav Mineshu Kimatzal Miyadon. It's like you're saving these items from them because they're going to eventually use them or sell them in some other way. But now you're able to get them at a much cheaper price. Mashma that it's going to be mutter, and l'chorah the reason is the same svara of a davra of it, meaning just like this is a davra of it here, and therefore we allowed you to go to this this shuk. So too by melach on Chol Hamoed, which is normally aser, but if it's a davra of it, it's going to be mutter. Now it's important to just clarify when we talk about a davra of it, there's fundamentally two different opinions as to what davra of it is. Is a davra of it simply the idea that I'm having a financial loss of any type? Meaning the distinction between a financial loss where I'm losing principal versus a financial loss where I'm not losing any principal, but I'm losing the opportunity to profit. That's a discussion we're going to be shown. Tosas over here on the bottom of Daf Yomi is the last Tosas over here. Just to read quickly inside. It says Pirush B'davar. What does it mean when it says in the Gemara that B'davar ha'avid it's mutter? Zok Tosas. Pirush Ha'davar. She'im loyim karena ata. If you don't sell this item now, Shema loyim karena yafe pam acheres. It'll come out that you won't be able to sell it. The yapsid min hakaren, it'll come out that what you paid for it will be lost. I mean, you paid $100 for an item, and now you can go ahead and sell it. Now, granted, you could be marviach now, but it's possible that after Chol Hamoed, if let's say it's going to go down in price even less than what you paid, and now it's going to go below your cost. Now you're going to lose principal. That's what Tosfos understands to be a davra of. So you're allowed to take advantage of the opportunity now. If the opportunity you have now is here today and gone tomorrow, and what will be left for you tomorrow is a loss of principle. But if on the other hand, Tosfos says about imlo yafsid min hakeren, ella shelo yarviach kol kach. Rather, all we're discussing here is profiting. Right? You're not going to lose anything. Let's say you paid $100 for it. You'll certainly be able to recover that. The question is, will you be able to be marviach more? Today you might be able to sell it for $150, whereas if you have to wait till later, you might only be able to sell it for $120. And by the way, the same thing would be true in the opposite direction about purchasing merchandise. Meaning, let's say if I can get the merchandise today at a level where if I wait to any other time, my cost will go up significantly. That's a loss of Karen. Although it could be in Tosfos, he would say that that's not so pashut. However, he says, Ein zeh chashav davar ha'avid, if all it is that's a loss of potential profit, the kol shekain, and he says, not like I just said, the kol shekain liknos schora, shema tihi yoseh b'yokar achar hamoed. That you certainly can't do. So it has to only be specifically something you already purchased, it has a price, and you're now able to sell it at a profit or even just at cost. And if after Yotiv it's going to go below cost, the loss of principal is going to be usher. Sorry, it's going to be mutter, but anything else is going to be usher. Other Rishonim speak out. Many other Rishonim, I think the Iker, the Rush, is the one who says it more emphatically. The Rush says that no, to chase profit would also be okay. And even if that means going to buy schayra that's cheaper today and you won't be able to get that schayra later on, And they base it on Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi talks about a traveling caravan where there was like a flea market that would travel through. You'd be allowed to go buy it from them on Chol Hamoed, even though Lamaisa, you're not really losing keren. It's all just a question of a future profit loss. That would already be considered a davra avid. And we'll have to think about these two shittas in the Rishonim as we go to the Gemara here at the end of the parak and the next parak where we continue to talk about davra avid. Can we find rayas one way or the other to each shita? But regardless, that's the understanding of the Rishonim when we talk about a davra avid. Is it specifically only going to be when it's a loss of principal, or even if it's a loss of the opportunity to profit more? If you go like the second Rishonim, you do have to sort of work out what is the difference between chasing profit, which we would be now saying is mutter, and let's say, for instance, in the Mishnah when we talked about being watering a Sadeh Beis Habal, we said it's only a Beis HaShlochin which is going to be mutter, and why is that? It's because a Beis HaShlochin is going to be a Davar Avid, whereas a Beis Habal, all you were really doing was allowing the fruit to grow faster. Why over there would it be usher? And that's not a clear thing. And could be the answer there might be that there is a distinction between chasing profit versus not chasing profit when you're discussing something that has tremendous tirfa. If there's a tirfa yisera, we said in the Mishnah that even a Beis HaShlochin is going to be usher. But if it's a tircha b'mu'et, we said in the Mishnah it's going to be mutter. It could be there's more than two levels of tircha. The basic tircha, which is usher, without a davar avod. Then a davar avod will make that mutter. However, if it's a higher level of tircha, then it's going to be usher, but only if it's, let's say, like a Beis Habal, where the level of tircha, only, let's say, by like picking up merchandise, which isn't a deep level of tircha, but it is some level of tircha. Well, there we'll say that according to Tosfos, it'll be usher, but according to these Rishonim, that'll be mutter. And then a higher madrega of tircha, which will be just different than here, let's say by a Beis Habal, where there it's going to be usher to chase profit. Even principal will be usher. So you have to sort of work it out in the Shittas Rishonim. Regardless, those are the two opinions. Let's go weiter. We'll see if we can bring rayas or kashas from these two shittas as we go through the Gemara. Continues the Gemara and says as follows. On Yud Aleph and Ben Aleph, third line here. Rav Shara Lechia Bar Ashi Lemigdal Uare Bechula Demoyade. He was matir them to make these fish nets. And here the issue is Lechora, it's a tircha, and tircha is going to be aser. However, it's a maisa hedyet. Therefore, it's going to be mutter. The Gemara says, my time in Mishum Hedyetu. So again, the understanding over here is that this is a new din. We've seen it already, but it's a little bit more fleshed out here. Is that when you have an Isser Melacha on Chol Hamoed, even if it's something that it seems might even be, maybe it's a Tzorech HaMoed, you probably could catch fish in another way, but we're going to allow you to do it as long as it's not a Maisa Umen, even if it's a Tircha, as long as it's a Maisa Hedyet. About Isli, which apparently is only possible to be made through a Maisa Umen, also my time in Maisa Umen. But Yehuda Shara La'ami Tanuri, he allowed the people who make the oven makers, Lemigdal Tanuri, to make ovens on Chol Hamoed. Ulav Bar Asvi Lemigdal Mahulta, he allowed him to make sibs, meaning in both of these scenarios, these were outright tirchas that are going to be mutter. For the Gemara, Aini, how could it be that you're telling me you can make an oven? We learned earlier, Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Meir were arguing, but they both agreed that you're not allowed to make an oven lechatchila on Chol Hamoed. So how can it work out over here that here he's saying it's mutter? Like kasha. Can be, when do we say it's mutter? When you're talking about in the summer months where it dries out quickly, so therefore after you build it, it's going to dry out and it'll be able to be used on Chol Hamoed, therefore it's a tzarech hayantiv, it's going to be mutter. Can be where it's wet outside and cold outside, it's not going to dry right away. Since it won't dry right away, it won't be ready. And since it won't be ready, what you're doing on Chol Hamoed is really l'tzarech achar hayantiv, that's going to be also. Continues the Mishnah Oisin ma'akal agag u'lemar pesas maset hedyet. The halacha is you're allowed to make a makkah. A makkah is sort of like a railing for a gag for your roof, u'lemar pesas for your porch, but you can only do it as a maisa hedyet. Avalo masa umin, you can't do a maisa umin. We'll see in the Gemara what this means. But we basically mean to say that a temporary railing, again, structurally sound, a temporary railing, not a unstructurally sound. Obviously, the whole reason why you're doing it is in order to prevent people from falling down. It has to be structurally sound. The difference is whether it's a permanent one versus a temporary one. Temporary one's going to be mutter, and a permanent one is going to be usher. This is a discussion in the Rishonim over here when it says osin maka. Does maka mean a maka shel mitzvah, or does it only mean like it's you borrowing the term maka, but it's not actually a scenario where there's a mitzvah maka, meaning maybe it's not on a regular roof that is used as a residence, but rather it's literally just the roof of your home or a porch that's not really used as a place of living. Because if it's used as a place of living, or it's used as a regular normal roof, the way it would be used, where there would be a chiyuv mitzad the mitzvah of ma'akah, we should point out, let's say the Ritva says this, the Ritva says that if it's talking about a ma'akah shal mitzvah, then avada the halacha is you don't need to limit the heter to a Maisa Hedyet, but a Maisa Omen Aser, or to be mutter even with a Maisa Omen because it's a mitzvah. That's the Shita of the Ritzvah. The Bir Halacha and many other Rishonim and Poskim seem to say not like that, that even the mitzvah smaka would be totally in Maisa Omen versus Maisa Hedyet, which is a little bit difficult. I don't understand why is that any different, let's say, for instance, than Sukkah, which is on Chalamayid and Bir Halacha says is mutter. Maybe you'll say that's also called a Maisa Umen versus a Maisa Hedyet. Maybe building a sukkah by definition, because it's a Diras Arai, it has to be a Maisa Hedyet, which is maybe true, because if you look at most people's sukkahs, it's clearly not being built professionally. Either way, the Mishnah is telling us that the Asiyas HaMa'akeh has to be done in a temporary fashion and not in a permanent fashion. And the reason is going to be because l'chayra, this is a scenario of tircha, and the tircha should l'chayra be aser, but if you do it as a Maisa Hedyet, that's going to be mutter. Continues the Mishnah, Shafenes HaSadok, and if you have an oven that has cracks inside, like the clay has cracked a little bit, you want to smooth it over with some sid, with some type of, cement or something like that, which is going to be aser. Normally it's a malacha of smoothing the mareach, right? So the halacha is that you would think it's aser. It says over here you can smooth it out. You can smooth it out with this tool that was used to smooth it out, or you could smooth it out with your hands or your feet. However, you can't use this other tool, which was sort of a unique tool designed to do a really good job. And it seems that the chiluk between the first half and the second half is it a Maisa Omen versus a Maisa Hedyet. So again, it would be the same halacha from the first case in the Mishnah. You have to understand what's the chiddush. Continues the Mishnah, it says Hatzir, Hatzinor, V'Hakoyro, V'Hamino, V'Hamaftech. These are all various different parts of a door. Right? So a tzir is v'pashas like a hinge, a tzinor maybe like a doorknob or a lock or a socket lock. The hakora, maybe tzina is like a deadbolt. The hakora would be the frame of the door itself. The haminol, the actual lock itself that you use to keep the door from opening. The hamaftech, and the key to open the door. So any one of these things are, very important to be able to make a door function. And the reason why it's important to have these things function, obviously, is because if you don't have these things functioning, you can have someone come in, Bezlanim can come and take all your stuff. So there's a tremendous scenario of a hefs and meruba here. So the halacha is if any of these things shenishburu break, you're allowed to fix them on chalamayid, and it's this, ain davar ha'aved gedolim mizu, that if you don't have the front door on your house, people can come in and take stuff. So therefore, the halacha is going to be that you're allowed to do those malachas. However, Zok the Mishnah will eventually yischav and lasais malachtim imoyin. Avada, it means that the only heter you have to do on a chalamayid is if it just so happens that it broke right before Yontiv, you didn't have time to fix it. But if you've been delaying it until you get home in time for Yontiv, and now all of a sudden for the first week in a long time you're home, then the halacha is you can't do it. You're not allowed to go ahead and fix it. And you can't, it's a bizayon to Yontiv if you're pushing it off the halacha. Mishnah continues and ends by saying, any food that is pickled, if the pickling process will finish before the end of Yontiv, meaning that you'll have an edible pickled food before Yontiv is over, then the halacha is kavshan, you're allowed to be kaivish it. But if you wouldn't finish it then, meaning it would not be edible until afterwards, then the halacha is you can't. Continues the Gemara. We said in the Mishnah that a ma'aka is going to be mutter if it's a Maisa Hedyet, but not if it's a Maisa Umen. No, this was brought up earlier. If you're talking about like reeds or like palm leaves, the point basically is this is some type of vegetation that you can use to make a makeshift wall, and somehow you'll tie it together in such a manner that it's going to be somewhat structurally, sound. Or you can even use rocks, bricks, stones, whatever it is. However, the enotach betit, like we said earlier, you can't use cement to make it permanent. Continue the Mishnah, Shafenes HaSadok and Magila Noisem B'Magila, that if you have an oven that has cracks in it and you want to make it a little bit better to use as an oven on Yontiv, not on Yontiv, on Chalamayid, to be able to make food l'tzarech Yontiv. It said over here you can flatten out the cracks. If Magila Noisem B'Magila, asked the Gemara, Hashta B'Magila Amr Shari, once you tell me I'm mutter, it's mutter for me to use the kli. Biyad v'regel mi boy, that you have to then go tell me biyad v'regel is mutter. I know that that's going to be mutter once you tell me that the tool is going to be mutter. So Gemara says no, you miss. We're going to edit the Mishnah. Shafenes asdokim. You can smooth out the cracks. Uma'agilan osan, and you can smooth them ke'ein ma'agila. Meaning you can use your hands biyad v'regel to accomplish what would normally be accomplished with this ma'agila tool. But rather the tool itself would be aser. But the tool can't be used. Meaning, and then it seems like what the Gemara means to say is that there's a reread in the Mishnah. What we're basically saying is that what's called the Maisa Umen is to use the tool, but to use your hands, that's going to be okay. And this morning, John pointed out that it's a little bit strange here because Biyad of a regular Chayr is going to be even more tircha. So it seems like we're focused more on the Maisa Umen part and less on the tircha issue. So it's already in exactly what the reason is for the distinction. However, the Mishnah continues and said, Hatzir v'Hatzir v'Hakar v'Hamidol v'Mafteach. Shenizbur metakna memoy. Urimini, if the Gemara, are you telling me you're really allowed to make a, you're allowed to fix these on Cholamayed, meaning in L'chayr, the process of fixing it would be banging and making a lot of noise. That's how Rashi learns Urimini. If that's the case, I have a brisa. The brisa says, Ad Yomov, until the days of Yoichem, Kohen Gadol, Hayapatish Makib Yerushalayim, the brisa, that's Tesefta, I think. No, it's a Mishnah. What is that? Meiser Sheni Perakei. Okay, fine. It says over there, until the days of Yoichem and Kohen Gadol, that you would hear the sound of the hammer in Yerushalayim on Cholamayid. Meaning what? It's Mash for the Gemara, Ad Yomavin, until his days, yeah. Mikam Ve'elach Loid must be, he made a takana to say that you can't. So that our Mishnah seems to be saying that you're allowed to go ahead and fix these things at Cholamayid despite the noise. And Rabbi Yochanan and Kohen Gadol must have made a takana to stop it. So which one is it? Meaning, how do you work it out? How can our Mishnah fit with the brisa over there? When it says no shver, not shver, loikosh kan b'denafchi in our kan b'denafchi. When did Rabbi Yochanan Kohen Gadol answer it? It's talking about when he was they were blacksmiths and they were banging their hammers on the anvils. The anvils are going to make a lot of noise, metal on metal. That was something that rose to the level of a tremendous bizoyim to Cholamayid, so he answered it. However, kan b'denagri, here we're talking about like carpenters, people who are just using wood, the banging of nails into wood, the banging of wood, or the cutting of wood. These are not things that are as loud, and therefore that's going to be mutter. It's not going to be as much of a problem. That's the din of our Mishnah. Maskiv or Rav Chizda has a problem with this. Yoimru kala rabba aser kala zuta zutar shari. Are you telling me that once you're saying it's aser to make a kol, we're going to start distinguishing between loud noises and light noises? It's got to be a low plug. That's the pashtus, meaning people aren't going to be able to really differentiate between loud noises versus light noises. Meaning, I might say that your light noise is a loud noise, and you might say that my light noise is a loud noise, or opposite, vice versa. So therefore, it can't be that we'd have such a distinction. When are we saying it's mutter? We're talking about where carpentry that's used with a saw. Carpentry used with a saw is not so loud. It's not so loud. The halakha is going to be over there that it's mutter. That's the din of our Mishnah. However, when Yochanan Kohen Gadol answered, talking about the chatzini, which is referring to like a chetz, like an axe. When you chop down with an axe, that work is very loud, and therefore that's what's aser. Papa Amar no. Kan kodem gzeira kan mach gzeira. He answers much more pashat. That the Yochanan Kohen Gadol brisa, which is mashma that it's aser, that happened after our Mishnah. Our Mishnah is teaching us before that, and in Hanami it'll come in Allah Lamaisa that it would be aser to fix these things on the Cholamayid. Whereas Rav Ashi, the last teretz says, oh no, Amar ha Reb Yehuda ha Reb Yosi. Reb Yosi and Reb Yehuda, which we'll see on the Beis, they have a machlekes about when you're doing a malach on Cholamayid that's a davar ha'avad that's mutter, do you need to employ a shinoi or not? Rabbi Yossi holds you do not need to employ a shinoi, and Rabbi Yehuda holds you do need to employ a shinoi, meaning maybe perhaps a ma'aseh umed versus a ma'aseh hedi, but regardless, you need to do some type of a shinoi. And therefore, we'll say that our Mishnah, which says it's mutter, is talking about like the shita of Rabbi Yossi, who says that it's mutter even without a shinoi, and the shita of Rabbi Yehuda, who holds you do need a shinoi. That is going to be that brisa. Who is the one who holds? Who's the Tana who holds that you need a shinoi by a davar ha'aved? That is the loy ki Rabbi Yosi, meaning like Rabbi Yehuda. And Amar Ravina kiman madlinan ha'idna. Like which Tana do we say nowadays? You can return the kivyus of the doorpost dedesha b'chol demud. You're allowed to put it back in place. Who is that shita? Meaning, and therefore, even without a shinoi, kiman ki Rabbi Yosi. That's like Rabbi Yosi, and therefore that's going to be the explanation. And it's mashma in the Gemara that that's the way we go. That really Beker Hadin nowadays it's going to be mutter because it's a davar ha'avid. You don't need to employ a shinoi like Rabbi Yossi. Continues the Gemara and discusses the last end of the Mishnah where it said kivashin shuyach alecha b'moed kavshin. It says over there that as long as the pickling will be finished before the end of Yontiv, then the halacha is you're allowed to pickle it. Whereas if it's going to go until after Cholamayid, after Yontiv, then it's going to be aser. So the Gemara bedisa levai kavri. So you had a river that was in the place called Lavoi, and it had a lot of fish in it. And what had happened was, the Bachir speaks it out a little bit different from Rishonim, but he basically says is that the river dried up and there was a lot of fish that were dying, and you basically had an opportunity now to go take all these fish, which you normally wouldn't be allowed to get, or you couldn't get, or you wouldn't be able to get it for free, meaning there's a big opportunity here. Also, Kuli Almatzad, everyone went, I guess maybe without asking Al-Shaila if they were allowed to or not, and they have all this fish. Now they went out to go take the fish to eat. What did they do? Aisu Kavra, they brought it home. Now, they're all home with this, gargantuan amount of fish, and they're trying to figure out what to do. They're certainly not going to be able to eat all of it on Cholamayid. So Sharlu Rava lemimlach minai. Rava says it's mutter to salt them, even though the pashtus, the salting of the fish, isn't going to be done before the end of Cholamayid, which would be in a direct kasha from our Mishnah. Abaye, that's Abaye's question. But it's not. So you see pickle unless it's going to be finished beforehand. And these are obviously not going to be beforehand. So how did Rava say it's mutter? I see no, since when they went down there, they brought them back with the intent to eat them. So now the fact that they have them, they're all planning on eating them. So now they have them. They want to eat them. What are they supposed to do now? The ishavik lahu, and now that they have them, if they leave them in their house, what's going to happen? Sadi, they're going to go bad. And if they go bad, it's going to be a big loss. Therefore, it's kiprakmatya ha'avidami. This is considered a davar ha'avid by business, where we say it's mutter, and therefore he says it was allowed to pickle it. So the din of our Mishnah, Rava must understand, is talking only about a scenario where you have some fish and you're going to salt them, and you want to salt them. The halach is you shouldn't go buy fish that you're going to need to salt unless you're going to salt them in a way that they'll be ready. But Einachanami, if for whatever reason you now found yourself beheter having a bunch of extra stuff, and now the question is, should you throw it all out? Then the halacha is you can, quote unquote, to use our current technology, you can freeze them, meaning because now it'll be used for another time. And therefore it's considered a davar of it, and it's going to be mutter. The ikad amri is a little bit more makel. The way the story goes there is that they came to Rava and said, what can we do? Can we go get the fish? Sharlu Rava, they changed the gears here, of mezal to go, meitzad catch, aisuye, bring back umimlach and salt all of these fish. Amrli Abaye hakadav ha'anon kivashin shu yachol achol mehen. In the Mishnah, the gears over here is a little bit different, but whatever the point is, kovshan, meaning kovshan snan. You see, the din of the Mishnah is only that you're allowed to pickle them if they could finish before the end of Yontiv, not after. And here, he was not only saying they could do it once they brought it home, but he was allowing them to go out to go get it, which is a much bigger heter. Amrle, he says, no, honey nami misachli agav itzitzad. It was apparently some sort of a technique to squeeze the brine out of the fish to make it edible. Really, it was not something you wanted to do, but if you did it, you could eat it. And therefore, since there's a technique to get these fish, which really need more time to get edible, you can sort of make them edible al yidei hatchak by squeezing them. Then therefore, it would even be mutter lechatchila to go out and get them. This obviously will only be true by these types of fish that have this technique of it's to helping. Obviously, if we're talking about something else where it wouldn't work, that wouldn't apply. But at least over here, he was not to them to go out and do it. And once we're discussing the techniques of bringing brined fish into an edible state a little earlier than normal, Kihad Shmuel Abdullah Shisen Itzitzi, he squeezed the fish 60 times v'achol. Rav Ikol Beirish Kalusa Abdullah Shisen Itzitzi v'achol, he did the same thing. Rav Ikol Beirish Shapir Aisu Lekanayu Ahu Kavra, they brought in front of him this type of fish. Tilta Bishula, a third of it was cooked. Tilta milcha, a third of it was salted, and the tilta tavia, and a third of it was roasted. And the Pashtus, it's bringing the story either to point out that it must be the third of them that were salted must have been salted in such a way that either it was going to be ready before Cholamayid, or perhaps it means that they were going to use this process of itzta, whatever the exact technique is, to make it mutter. Regardless, that's what happened. Rav really Ad Tzayda was, let's say, a big fisherman. He understood everything there is to know about fish. So what did he say? Ad Tzayda told Rav the following: Kvara, these fish, kavra, samach lemisrchei ma'ali, close to the point when they're going to turn rotten, before they actually become rotten. That's when they taste the best, which nowadays we would probably run away from. But the point is that, and then the times of the Gemara, that was the right time to eat it. That's when it had the biggest taste. In fact, Taisus actually pointed out over here, ubizman hazeh tofsim sakana lemechol samach l'sirch, when we hold that it's usher, and he says, in fact, maybe this is exactly like what we say by refuos of the Gemara, where it says v'shem nishanu k'mo harefuos shebashas she'enon tovas bizman hazeh. Very cited as a Taisus for dealing with whether nishtana hateva when it comes to the Gemara's refuos, which we generally speaking don't rely on. Not generally speaking, we absolutely don't rely on. Another story from Adatzayda about fish. Kavri tavya ba'achua. If you want to know how to roast fish, you roast them ba'achua in their brother. What's the brother of fish? The salt that comes out of the water. So just like the fish come out of the water, so the salt comes out of the water, so you can call them brothers. Asuke, to dip them. What do you dip them in? Ba'avua, in its father, meaning in the water that it comes from. Michli, what's it's eaten with? It's eaten bibrei, with its child, meaning the squeezed out brine. You eat it with that brine. And ishti, what do you drink it with? You drink it alei avua, you drink it with water. Rav Amrli Adatzaida said the following thing as well. Kavra, tachla, b'chalva. These three things. Kvara, fish, tachli, which is like a type of cress, watercress, which is like a type of cauliflower herb, an herb that's like related somehow to the cauliflower. It's like a peppery herb that is used in a salad or something like that. So if you eat that, if you eat this type of kavra, these types of fish, v'chalva, and milk, so the halacha is that although normally we say better not to move too fast after you eat, these three things are an exception. Liton gufa, a person should carry his body, meaning he should exercise before below liton purya. He shouldn't just go straight to bed. The last one from Adatzaida over here, kivara, tachli, v'chalva, these three things as well. Maya v'leishikra, better to drink water and not beer. If you don't have any water, so then okay, you have to drink beer. Better beer, shikra v'leicham, and not wine. Hadron alech mashkin beis hashlachen. We'll come back to you soon. Nitz Hashem continues the Gemara, Daf Yomi, and the base. The Gemara says, Misha hafach has zaysav. What we're talking about over here is the process of squeezing oil out of zaysin. And just as a quick akdama to this Mishnah, we know that there's an isser malacha on chol hamayid. However, there's also an isser malacha for a person who becomes an avel nebuch. Le'aleinu, a person loses a karav, one of the 7 kroivim. The halacha is he becomes an avel, he or she becomes an avel, and they are also ben malacha for the time of their avelus. So the question is are we going to draw some comparisons between the isser malacha on chol hamayid and the isser malacha of an avel? We'll see in the Gemara. However, the Mishnah is discussing a person who has, let's say, an olive press. The olive press, without getting too much into the details of the process of an olive press, they would take the olives and they put them up into the press, and then they'd have to sort of turn them over a bunch of times. Turning them over was through a process of heating them. It allowed the olives to become much more prepared to be able to squeeze out the oil in a proper amount so you get the most out of it. Now, if a person had turned his olives on the press but had not squeezed them at least once, the halacha is not the halacha. The reality is that those olives would go bad and you wouldn't get any oil out of it. But once you're able to press it once, then although you may not get the most out of it, at least you're saving a lot of oil. But if you don't squeeze it once, it's a major loss. So that's the din of our Mishnah. The din of our Mishnah is what happens if a person finds himself in a scenario where a major loss is going to happen if he does not do the malacha at a time when he is also b'malacha. So Zak the Mishnah, Misha hataf has a person who has turned his olives in his press but has not squeezed them yet, the iru aval, and at that moment he became an avel, and now he's also b'malacha. Is he allowed to do anything or not? Or a case where now it's not talking about an avel, it's talking about as a regular day of Erev Yontiv, a week before Yontiv, whatever it is, or whatever it is, his workers left. He finds himself in a situation where it's now Cholamayit, and he has his olives turned and prepared to squeeze, but now he can either squeeze them and save his oil, or not squeeze them and lose them. Zak the Mishnah, Toyin Kaira Rishayna. He can take the first beam, which would be used to press. He can do the first squeeze, umenicha, and then he has to leave it. La'achar hamayed. He has to then leave it. Divrei Reb Yehuda. This again is a shinoi, meaning this is what we were discussing on Amud Aleph. Reb Yehuda is of the opinion that you can't just go ahead and because it's a davar ha'avid, go ahead and get rid of it. Rashi speaks out over here that it's specifically because it's going to be usher because it's a hefsid meruba. He uses. He says the Eloi avid hachi ikab seda yisera. And so we'll have to see chiluk between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi is true by a regular davar ha'avid. It's mashma that here it's a hefsid meruba, or you're going to literally lose out the whole thing, not just a little bit. However, the Mishnah continues and says, Rabbi Yossi, Omer zolef v'gomer v'gaf kedarko. You can do the rest of the process of squeezing the oil out. Not only that, you can put it in the jar and seal it up in the normal way. You don't need to employ any shinuyim. Rashi says, Koimer nosno al gabe beis habad. You could put it on the press. The sochet hakol. You can squeeze everything out. Kol midi de shafach kari zilaf. Okay, Rashi's explaining exactly what zilaf is. The point is you're squeezing out the oil. You can go ahead and do that. And when you're finished doing that, you can take all your oil. You don't have to lose anything. That is the shita of Rabbi Yossi because it's a davar ha'avid. It's going to be mutter. It goes off to Gemara. I'm a little bothered here. You started off talking about an avel and then you talked about chalamai. You told me these halachas by chalamayid, but you didn't tell them to me by an avel. Ask the Gemara, what does that mean? Pasach ve'avel v'sim b'mayid. What's the understanding of why you did that? You never came back to telling me the halacha by an avel. Are we to assume that the halacha in the Mishnah applies to an avel as well, or is it specific to chalamayid? Amar Rav Shisha Breder Rav Idi. So marist. What the chiddush over that must be is that devarim hamutar b'mayid is asur mimei evla. That there's a distinction between the two. That we're going to be more makel by a chalamayid than we are going to be by an avel. And the chiluk basically comes down to that by chalamayid all yidden have an ism malacha, whereas an avel it's only him. and his craving that have an Isser Malacha who are also Avelim. But if the people are around him, they can do the things, the Malacha that he's going to be also to do. So therefore, maybe we won't be as makel with him with Malacha as we would by Chol Hamayit. Mora says, Ravashi Amr Loimi Boya Kamer. He says, no. Avada, it's Pashat. Loimi Boya and Avel is going to be mutter. Ella Afilu Chalamayit is going to be us. It's going to be mutter, to use, employ this malacha because of its being a davar avid, meaning loimi boy b'yemei evlo de midurabanan hu v'shari, that it's midurabanan, which is not so pashat mitzad the avelus if it's midurabanan, but everyone's masking mitzad the isser malacha that it's midurabanan. So if the isser malacha for an avel is only midurabanan, and we're saying it's mutter, loimi boy that ela afilu b'mayid the isser malacha deraisa. That's an isser malacha deraisa, which is very difficult, obviously, according to the Shitas from Bein Tam, is the main one in Taisus, but other Rishonim who understand that the Isser Chalamayid, Malach and Chalamayid is only Midrabanan. So what does it mean over here in the Gemara? Deraisa. I'm not going to explain it now, but the point is the Gemara is pointing out that it is a very strict level of Malach. It's going to be more than the Isser Malach by an Avel. So if you're going to tell me by an Avel that there's going to be an Isser Malach that you're going to be matter it, right? Ela afilu b'mayid Isser Malach Midaraisa. Meaning, Zok Rav Ashi, don't be medayik in the Mishnah that there's a chiluk. Meaning, Rav Shisha Breder Rav Edi wants to say that we're going to be mechalik between Avel and say that it's usher even by a davra avid. Rav Ashi is saying no, davra avid, which is mutter by chalamayid, is also mutter by avel, and it's a loimi by a kamar, right? So afilu b'moed the ism malachim deraisa b'makom say the rabbanon. That's the machlekes over here about whether we'll say the same din by an avel or not. Now the Gemara is going to bring a brisa. The Gemara is going to be a raya for the first sheet that we make a chilik. The raya is going to come from the fact that an avel is only mutter for others around him to do the malacha, but not him. That's going to be the raya. But once we bring this raya, it's a very long brisa, which really takes us to the end of Amud Beis over here, and that'll take us to the end of the daf. Tanya, and we'll probably pause in the middle of the brisa just because it is a very long brisa. Tanya kavase ishim greder of idi, that there's a chilik between the heter of hefsid of a davar ha'avid by Chalamayid, which does not exist by an avel. What do you see that from? Elu dvarim ha'oisim la'avel b'yemei evlo. That's the raya, really. The following are the things you could do for an avel during his avelus. Zaysin hafuchin, if his zaysim are turned over, tayan in law, you can press them for him, which is very much not mashma like that from our Mishnah. Our Mishnah is like Rav Ashi, and that the din of the Mishnah, of allowing him to finish it off, I said even by an avel, then right away, that's a mashma not like him, because here it's only mutter for you to do it on his behalf, but he can't do it himself. Right, so Zaysav Afuch and Tainin Loy, the Chadai Loguf, you can seal up his barrel of oil. Pashtono, if he has a flax field, La'alois min HaMishra, you can take it out of the soak, which is how they sort of prepared the flax. Utzimoro, and his wool, La'alois min HaYora, can be taken out of the barrel of dye. Marbitzin, you can water Sadeo, his field, Mishitagia, Oinas HaMayim Shalo. Yehuda Oimer Ach Zoyrin Loy Sadanir, you can even go ahead and plant in his field if the field is prepared. V'Sadeh HaOmedis Lepishton, and if it's a field that is Oimed Lepishton, you can even do it for that as well. Amrulo, they said to Rabbi Yehuda, Imlo Sizra B'Bchir. So this is a different shita. They said that no, maybe you can't go ahead and plant the flax, and you can't plant in his field, because if you're not going to be able to plant in the early times B'Bchir, Tizra V'Ofel, so you'll do it in the later one. So maybe that's not considered such a big loss, and therefore that's not going to be mutter. And same thing, Imlo Sizra Pishton, Sizra Menach, you'll be able to go ahead and plant a different min. The point basically is that they're arguing with Rabbi Yehuda and saying that even that's going to be also to do on his behalf. But regardless, from the Gemara's standpoint of understanding the machlekes here, we can bring a raya to the first shita. The raya is the fact that you see you can only do this malach on his behalf. He's not allowed to do these things on his own. So you see that for a davar avid, an aval is not going to be mutter. The brisa continues. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel oimer zaysin hafuchin, if the olives have been turned over, the ein sham umen elahu. So he's going to be sort of an in between. Meaning Rav Ashi was explaining our mission to say that the aval is going to be mutter on his own to do it. The sheet of Rav Shisha Breder Rav Edi understood not like that it's going to mamish be usher. The Bryce is coming along to say that there are shitas who hold that you can do it on his behalf, but for him it's usher. Rav Shimon Gamliel is saying sort of an in-between piece. He's saying Omer Zaysav Hafuchin, if his olives have been turned, he can't do the malacha. However, the Ein Shama Umin Elohu, but if he's the only professional who knows how to do it properly, or Kadola Guf, or his barrel needs to be sealed up, the Ein Sham Umin Elohu, and no one else knows how to do it other than him. Pishtanu lahalos min hamishra, or his pishtan, his flax, needs to be taken out of the barrel. Vitzmaro lahalos min hayora, or his wool needs to be taken out from the dye barrel. The ein sham umen elahu, and in all of these scenarios, there's no other professional available to do it. Harei zeh ya'aseh, he takes Rashi, takes the gears out. Harei zeh ya'aseh, Rav Shimon Gamliel shita is you could do it. It's mutter as long as he's the only one who knows how to do it. But in Echanami, if there's others around, then the halacha is, so it's almost like the lechatchila b'di'evid. Lechatchila, he shouldn't do it as an avel, he shouldn't rely on the heter of a davra avid, but b'di'evid he can, meaning b'shas hatchak, he can if there's no one else around to do it. And this is true if it's all for his own stuff. Yes, okay. Not only that, Amar Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, umen l'rabim. If he's an umen l'rabim, or if he's a safar, he's a barber, or a balon, he's the local professional who handles the mikvah, right? Meaning he helps it out. L'rabim, the higia eis haregel, and it's now time to handle all of these things for the yontif. The ein sham umen Elohu, and he's the only one who's available to do it. So then harei zeyaseh, which is interesting. Why is that a bigger chiddush? Meaning l'chayr, there's a tzarech harabim versus his own stuff. The Allah is he's even allowed to do it for other people. Harisin are those people who work the land as a sharecropper. They're percentage owners in the property, or at least they have a percentage in the payros of the property. The hachachirin, these would be people who pay to have the right to use the land, and anything they're able to use the land for, they get to keep. The hakablonin, or people who are just simply salaried workers who are working the land. In all of these scenarios, the malacha that they're doing, l'chayr should be usher on. That's novel. The halach is they should not do the malach, but rather others should do it for them. Hachamarin, hagemalin, v'hasapanim. If you have people who rent out donkeys or camels, or their boat rentals, or they lead the boats, they're boat captains, whatever it is, they're involved in the malacha. The halach is harei elu lo yasu. They should also not do this malacha. Why? Because they're aval and they're also b'malacha. Rather, they should have others do it for them if they can't, and they shouldn't do it themselves. Muchachrin oy muskarin. If the business had already started, that he had already signed a contract with these Gemalins, Fun, and the Chabar, and whatever it is, then the halacha is, and they're already by other people, and now people have paid for the service, then the halacha is Harei Yasu, you're allowed to do it in order to prevent the loss. That's too much of a loss. It's also causing losses to other people, therefore it's going to be mutter. Continues the Bryce and says, Chir Yom, if a person is paid and by the hour. So then the halacha is, if he picks up and leaves in the middle of the day, not only can he do that, there's no loss to anybody. Then the halach is he shouldn't do the malacha not only in his own city, but even in someone else's city where no one's going to even know that he's an avel because of maris ayin. It's still the halach is he shouldn't do it. However, if let's say you're talking about he had the malacha already by him, meaning it was already contracted to do the malacha, and it's the malacha is in his house, and he wants to do it. Even though it's project based and not hourly. The halacha is lo yasa, meaning it seems like from Gemara that the fact that it's project-based would have been an argument to say that he should be able to do it. Ask the Gemara, afal pisha b'kibaylas. That doesn't make sense. The loimi bayesh ain't a kibaylas. It's mashma that you're saying that it would make more sense to say that it's mutter when it's b'kibaylas. Adarabba, Gemara says kibaylas kididei dami. But when it's b'kibaylas, when it's a project, it's like he's literally the one who gets to choose when to do the malacha. That's significantly more like it's his own work. And there's even more of a reason to say it's aser. So the Gemara says, you're right. Let's amend the brayse. Whether he was taking it on as a project where he gets to choose when to do the malacha, or it was taken on where he's specifically told when to do the malacha. Regardless, benkach the halacha is lo yasa because he has an ism malacha. However, let's say he had the work, and someone else in his home, Bib Besa, is going to be doing the work, there we'll say lo yasu, he shouldn't do it because of maris ayin, because people will say maybe he's doing it when they're not there, or maybe it's that he's going to help out the other people while they're doing it. However, if it's the base acher yasu, if he's the owner of the business and he takes in stuff, but he has other people work site and he's away, if he's not physically there, it's in someone else's home, then the halacha is that it's mutter. We'll hold here for today's daf, and Mitzvah Shem tomorrow we'll pick up from the next bit of the Gemara.